everyone. Sorry about the delay. Big storm. Very noisy, very annoying. Thanks for joining us today. We're here to discuss reading and recommend some books to you. We've got Kirsty, Paulina and Gary here. They're going to talk us through some of their favourite books, but before we start, I just want to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting, and we pay respects to their elders past and present. So let's maybe we'll start with what you're currently reading at the moment and talk about that. Okay. Kirsty?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently reading The Miniaturist by Burton. I've been meaning to read it for several years now and just kept not picking it up for some reason. I'm actually quite enjoying it. It's a slower book so far, but it just pulls you right in. And it's currently being made into a TV series, I think, which is interesting. It's about this young woman, Nella, in 1686 Amsterdam, and she moves to the city to live with a new husband who she barely knows, and he gives her this gift of a miniature house to fill with miniature things to practice, like running the household and looking after budgets and things like that. But there's just something a bit awry with the house, and things keep turning up that she hasn't asked for, and it's a little bit spooky, and unfortunately I haven't got far enough in to see exactly where it's leading yet, but it's just a little bit supernatural.
So things keep turning up inside this
house,
miniature house,
and from what I understand, they're then reflected in real life. So things that the person making the miniatures should not know, and things which they definitely couldn't predict. So I'm very interested to see where it keeps going.
That's really interesting, because I'd seen that book a lot, and I presumed it was about a painter of miniatures. So someone who painted. So that's very different from what I thought it was. That sounds interesting. I might read it after
She's done quite a few books as well, so I might pick up her other ones after this. And I'm one of those annoying people who has several books on the go at once. I didn't actually bring in, I think, the third book I'm reading, but the second book I'm reading is Bridge of Clay by Marcus Zusak. The Book Thief was one of my favourite books of all time, and I've got it down under the table there waiting for when we talk about our favourite books if we get the time. So this is his first book after The Book Thief, and is that 10 years later? Maybe a bit more?
Maybe more, yeah.
Yeah, so
it's been a while because I've had the movie as well.
Yeah, it took him quite a long time, and I read an article a little while ago about how he really struggled with this book, with the pressure and expectation of bringing out something new after the huge success of The Book Thief. I'm about 100 pages in so far. I have to admit I found the start a little bit choppy, a little bit disjointed, but it's now getting to the point where the style is really starting to sink in, and it's becoming a lot easier to read. So it jumps backwards and forwards in time a lot, even within the same chapter. And it's about 5 brothers and their father so far. I haven't got far enough to see the whole of the story, but
I think it's interesting what you say.
Glenn's making a noise like he wants to say something.
I was just going to say, if you read one book at a time, you would be further through.
How can you work in a library and read one book at a time?
It's difficult when you take a stack of 15 books home with you, and they'll all call into you from the bedside table.
And then people are waiting for them to come back, and we have to bring them back.
Yes, that's right. I do usually finish them before I need to return them, but definitely checking in books is a bit of a hazard.
It is.
It's interesting what you say about the expectation, because you read these great books, and they make them, the writer makes them seem quite effortless, don't they? In their way. And you think, okay, well, these are just genius writers, and they've got ideas coming out of their heads, and they can just not necessarily knock another book out, but know how to write the next one, and the next one, and the next one. But of course,
but not always. Like
they're
To
only
Kill a
human, aren't they?
Mockingbird and Gone with the Wind. One very, very good book each, and that was all they did.
Yeah.
Really.
Very good.
What about you, Paulina? What are you reading at the moment?
The Jane Austen Project. Nearly finished with that.
You haven't finished it.
No.
Oh.
And so don't tell me what happens, and I'm terrible at giving away endings. I tend to give too many hints. I'll tell someone about a film and tell them nearly everything. But Kathleen A. Flynn, I don't know what else she's read, but it's really good. I really enjoyed it. I believe you read it too, Glenn.
Yes, it's very good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. These two people from the future go back into the past to sort of like rewrite history and fix problems in the past. So they go back into the past. They've practiced, been very trained in how to go back in the past and how to act in the times that they're going back to. And they land in about 1820 when Jane Austen was quite ill and nearing the end of her life and still had an unfinished novel. So the aim of their mission is to, because they know probably what she had, doctors do know now what was probably wrong with Jane Austen, and to tell her how she can help herself through her illness, befriend the family, and so she can write more novels so we can all read them. So it's a great concept, really interesting, really well done. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and a lot of ethical dilemmas in it as well. I thought it was really interesting, and the people were concerned about that as well, the characters, and you really felt for them. It's sort of, they started feeling guilty, even though this is our mission and we know we're doing the right thing. You're feeling guilty because we're making friends with this person, the family really like us, but we're here to take stuff off us.
They're really worried about changing history, even though that's their mission to do this one thing, which is save Jane Austen.
Yeah.
But they're worried about those other little things that they're causing or possibly causing.
Yes.
And they don't know what they're going to go back to when they finish.
Exactly. So that's what I'm finding. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing the end and see how it all turns out.
Yeah, it's a good book.
It is really well worth reading.
Do I have to add something else to my
You
pile?
do. It's great for people who love Jane Austen, who like science fiction, or who like history. I found it was really interesting.
I think me and Kirsty will be racing to the nearest computer to put a hold on that one.
Yes.
Sounds very good.
What about you, Gary?
Okay, well, I've got a couple here. One that I've just finished, and I'll talk about that one in a short while after when we get round to it. At the moment, I'm currently reading this book, The Killing Habit by Mark Billingham. So he's a British writer, and slowly getting recognised as one of the great writers in detective that England's produced over recent years. I previously read or previously listened to one of his books on audio, The Bones Beneath, and that when I was doing a lot of commuting, and that really got me into his style. He writes about a detective called Tom Thorne, and I think this is about the 15th book about this D.S. Thorne.
Have you read all of them?
No. This
Not
was
yet.
the latest one, so I chose this one because it was the latest one. But that's an interesting point because his books go over a lot of history between the detective, previous criminals that he's dealt with, and how they've messed with his mind a little bit, and they're still with him, and also his relationships with other.
So he weaves that past in well, so you don't kind of notice the exposition that much.
Absolutely no. He does it really well, and he doesn't spend lots of time on it. He just throws in a sentence here or there, and there was times when I thought, okay, well, I don't know much about that relationship. Obviously, he's mentioned it in previous books, but at the same time, it doesn't take you away from it. It doesn't detract from the story.
Oh, that's handy if you could sort of jump into anywhere in the series.
That's it.
Yeah.
So this one's really good. It's so must admit it took me a while to get into this one. It took me about 60-80 pages, and at first I was thinking, I'm not sure about this, but by around about the 80 pages mark, it grabbed me.
Yeah.
And suddenly, all the different threads that it'd been gradually building suddenly all started to come together a little bit, and you're thinking, I don't know, how does that overlap with something else I read a little bit earlier? And it starts to draw you in.
Yeah.
And the different hooks that he has at the end of each chapter as well. You know, they keep you reading.
Yeah, and you can't go to sleep because you
I
just want to read one
know.
more.
Yeah, that's it. So this is at the moment. This is about 2 stories. So I'm about 150 pages in. So we've got 2 threads going at the moment. One of them's about a man that's come out of prison. He got into drugs while he was in prison, and in order to keep paying for the drugs, he got mixed up with some bad people who he then had to work for, and he's now got accused of murder that he didn't commit. So that's one investigation that's going on. And then the main thread of this one, which is about, so it says every killer has to start somewhere, or every killer starts somewhere. And it's about animal killings that have gone on, and how they could be like a precursor to human murders.
They
So-
say that. I've read some things with the psychology things. They say you have to watch out because they often start on pets.
Well, there you
Yeah, and
go.
animals. Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
how.
So, yeah, it's a good story so far, and it feels like it's building to be a very good story. Very
Scary though.
looking forward to it. So that one's called The Killing Habit, Mark Billingham.
Great. So I've just got a comment that's come up on the Facebook saying they love anything Jane Austen. So I thought I might quickly let people know that we're having an author talk next year. May, I think it is. No, March. March 7, I think. Jane Austen, not Jane Austen, but her great grand niece. So her brother's direct descendant. She's written a book about her growing up, living where Jane Austen worked and lived as well, at Chawton House. So that will be, I think, a really interesting talk to come along to for anyone who's into Jane Austen and hearing her point of view on all Jane Austen.
Where's this being held?
That will be here at Plaza Library. Let me just make sure I'm
So
getting it
that'll be
right.
on our website close to the date.
It will be. You can't book in yet. It's on Thursday, the 7th of March, and you can book in closer to the time, to the day.
Fantastic.
That'd be interesting. She'd have a lot of family insights, and especially living in the house.
Yeah.
The Jane Austen lived in.
I think it will be very good. Her name is Caroline Jane Knight, if you want to look that up. She's founded Austen Heritage, or Heston
Oh yes.
Heritage Austen, one of those. Anyway, let's talk about books. Some new releases. Has anyone got any new releases they can talk about, or recently released books that have come out this year, just so we can be current and with the times?
I've got one. I was just having a look at this. It's a new one by Tracy Chevalier. She's the one that wrote The Girl with the Pearl Earring, which was made into the film. Yeah, it was very popular. So this one looks interesting. I'm looking forward to reading it. I haven't started it yet. It's called At the Edge of the Orchard. So it's about a family in the 1838, it starts, up to 1853, and the family and one of their sons, Robert, and what happens to the family. They grow an orchard, and whether to go into cider making or apples for eating, and just trying to find some land of their own and some roots.
Yeah.
So it's roots, fruit, so it's the whole sort of thing. And the book is really interesting style too. I haven't read it yet, but I was looking at it, and it goes backwards and forwards in time. There's Ohio and
Seems to be a
California.
theme tonight.
Yes, yeah, it is, isn't it? And letters as well. So letters between family members. So really interesting. We're going by her other books that she's written, which are really well written and really good reads. I'm really looking forward to reading this one. So At the Edge of the Orchard, Tracy Chevalier.
Excellent.
How about you, Kirsty?
Kirsty,
I
have too many.
Oh my goodness.
Kirsty's got 45 books that she's just about to read.
It's dreadful working in the library, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's terrible.
We get too many books.
That's not a new release. However, Bridge of Clay just came out last month, I believe. So that's very new. Very excited about that one. The next one I think I'll read is actually a children's book. I have to have it next on the list because one of our other librarians kindly lent it to me, and I should probably get that back to her. It's the second book in the Morrigan Crow series by Jessica Townsend. So the first book, Nevermore,
Oh, yes.
was I think the best-selling children's book in Australian history so far.
Is it children's or young adult?
I think it's a bit crossover, so maybe like 13, 14.
Okay.
It's really interesting, kind of madcap, kind of Harry Potter meets Doctor Who meets like.
So,
Sounds
hang
like a
on,
good
did
Christmas
you say
present.
the highest selling
I think that's what they
Can't.
said.
Harry Potter though?
Australian
Australian?
children's book. Yeah, I think it's
John
one of
Marston.
the.
I don't know. Interesting.
I'm just remembering that. Don't quote me. There's
Sounds like a
also,
good Christmas present.
of course, did anyone read The Dry?
Oh yes, yeah, that was very good.
Yeah. So this is The Lost Man, the new Jane Harper one. That's just a month or two old. I read The Dry and really enjoyed it, but I didn't pick up the next book because I thought I had enough closure from The Dry that I didn't need to continue on with that character's story. So this one looks like it's a new standalone one about two brothers and murder, of course.
Yes.
I haven't gotten very far in. I just had a quick flick because I know there's a lot of holds on it, so I'm probably going to return it quickly and read it at a later stage. But I'm really looking forward to it. I really enjoy the way she writes and the way she writes the Australian outback and rural areas and the types of people there. Especially having lived in the suburbs my whole life, it's almost a very different landscape.
Good imagery.
Yeah, so that's something I'm really keen.
Because The Dry
get
really
onto.
made you feel the drought, didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was very well written.
and I did bring up a whole stack of books from under the table there. These two books, these last two books, are the latest books in series. So we've got Lies Sleeping, which is the new PC Grant book by Ben Aranovich. The series is probably better known as the Rivers of London series.
Oh yeah.
So it's a supernatural detective series. The detective work in this book is so good. It's set in London. The main character is a mixed race detective, and he's just got this very dry wit, and it keeps you on your toes. And I think this book wraps up one of the main arcs that's been going on. So I'm very interested to see what happens with one of the main bad guys that's been plaguing the town. And then, look, this is the last one in the pile. This one is The Mortal World. It's the latest book in the Invisible Library series. Couldn't come on without talking about library theme
No,
book.
I have that one.
The first one is called The Invisible Library, and my review the first time I read that first book was spies, steampunk, magic, libraries. It's all I need. So there's an interdimensional library that exists for its main purpose to collect rare and unique volumes from different worlds in the universe, and collect them all and keep them safe. And the main character, Irene, she's a librarian, a library agent who goes to the other worlds and like sneaks in using espionage and steals books or acquires them.
Acquires, yeah.
Yeah, and can speak the library language, which is like if you read fantasy, a lot of it's based in the idea that language has power. So she could say, "Hey, water, bubble over," in the library language, and it would. So that's a really, really fun series.
Is it meant to be humorous?
Yeah, it's what I call a caper book. So you're just running around on adventures the whole time, getting into trouble,
And is that aimed at young adults as well? And it's a
I think
crossover?
this is an adult
Right.
series. I think young adults would enjoy it, but it's not. Yeah, it's not a young.
Looks
young
great.
adult.
A lot of fun.
Interesting subject.
Yeah.
And have an adult character.
Yeah.
protagonist.
Yes. All right, I'll let someone else talk. now.
Do you have anything, Gary, to
Um,
add? Or
Well, I have the Mark Billingham one.
yeah,
So that's my 2018 book.
Yep.
The next one was a 2017 one, so I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
whether we were ready to
Yeah,
talk
go.
about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one's by David Wong. The guy's real name is Jason Pargin.
Oh, okay.
He's the executive editor of Cracked.com, so an online news site. This is the third book in a sort of a loose series. Got the three main characters. They've got David Wong, so it's like a self-written book
yes.
by the protagonist.
what were the names of the other books? Because I recognised the name.
There's John dies at the end.
That's right.
So John is David's best friend.
Yep, yep.
I've heard of
And
that
one. Yes.
the second book is This Book is Full of Spiders,
Yes.
which I read several months ago,
With
and
the-
it was fantastic.
And kept the lights on afterwards.
Well, the good thing about this is it's a mixture of horror
Yep.
and comedy.
I love the cover. I mean,
It's-
you shouldn't judge a book by the cover, but it's great, isn't
well,
it?
well, often sometimes I do. If I see a
Yeah.
good cover, it
Yeah.
draws me in.
Yeah.
And this one was it's just got such a good way of mixing humour with comedy. I mean, there's swearing, there's so you got John and David, who are a couple of losers in this town called Undisclosed, because they don't want people to know the real name, because people are just going to come forward and they're going to storm towards this town.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the town where Buffy grew up, where
Yeah.
absolutely everything
Oh,
happens.
yeah.
It's one of those
Yeah.
type places. So David's girlfriend is the third character. That's Amy, and these two guys have taken some sort of drug in the past. They call it soy sauce. But this drug enables them to see all the weirdness that's going on in this town. So they can see, zombies, they can see aliens, they can see these beasts,
And no one else can?
and no one else can.
Oh.
Are we sure it's not the soy sauce talking?
Well, yeah, it's a really good series, and I mean, in this one, it starts off with a child going missing, and these two guys, that they start to get involved in it because they are the local known people that deal with this sort of thing. They get involved in it, and it's one of those books you really can't say too much about because it's so full of ideas that it would spoil it to say too much.
Yeah.
But there's interdimensional travel, there's weird aliens that can play with people's minds to change their memories, that gives them a completely different reality to what everyone else can see. There's so much going on. This, like David's best friend, John. Another good thing about the narrative in this, there's so much to say, but the good thing about the narrative in this is that it's told from multiple perspectives. So David might have a chapter, Amy will have a chapter, and John will have a chapter.
Just a sec, didn't John die in the first book?
What I've been waiting to ask.
Yeah, don't believe anything you
Oh,
read.
okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
It's
great.
like when Kenny dies in South Park.
Yeah,
he
he's
goes
back again.
So the chapters are told from different perspectives, and David's a bit of a depressive.
Yeah.
He can't face his depression. Amy's a bit of a realist, but sometimes she can get too involved because she gets too emotional and feels too much for aliens or whoever she's dealing with. And John is just this guy that just can't help himself exaggerating. And his chapters, in his chapters, he comes across as being this action hero who the women can't get enough of, and he talks about himself with his shirt off, and it's just over the top stupidity.
And then you get Amy and David's view of him.
And then you get Amy and David's view of him. Oh, come on, John, now tell us the truth, that sort of thing. So I
Sounds
really
great.
recommend. Yeah, if you like a bit of horror, if you like just good ideas,
Yep.
a book just full of ideas, and a lot of his observations are very cleverly observed, and they're sort of situated in the real world. So he talks a lot about modern life, but he sort of manages to do it in this sort of surreal universe that he's created here. So Yeah,
Do you
certainly
have to
won't.
read the first one? Do you have to read them in order?
No, I read This Book is Full of Spiders first. Once again, I was just captured by the book cover, which was bright red with a spider on it eating its way through a book. I'm yet to read the one where John dies at the end. I think we do have it in our collection.
Sounds
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah.
I don't think we have This Book is Full of Spiders, so I'm
Okay.
going to have to put in a request for that one. But I would say no, you don't have to read them in sequence.
Okay.
So, yep. What the hell did I just read by David Wong?
All right. Before we continue, I think I'll just quickly let everyone know about the summer read, which is the whole point of what we're doing here, encouraging everyone to get into reading. It's a lovely night for reading. It's terrible weather. We have a summer read for everyone, all ages, 3 different age groups. So we have the adult summer read, which runs from the start of December till the end of January. All you need to do is just read books, not hard, and then just enter them into the website. You can just go to the library's, Wyndham Library's website, and you can find links to all that. If you just log your books, if you review your books, and also if you attend library events, you can earn more entries into the draw, and you will win a $150 Shadowfax winery voucher and Google Home Mini as well. So that's for the adults. They can win those prizes. And then we have the teen summer read as well for 12 to 18-year-olds. They can do the same thing, enter their books they've read online and submit reviews and make sure they're good, because they get rejected if they're not very good.
Oh,
So you mean no one
you
word
mean-
review?
you mean
Yeah,
nice,
they
not-
make sure they do review the book and not just say this is about John and David and it's really fun.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
Yeah, but not anyway. Yes,
proper review.
and there's a prize for the teen summer read, which is a Robinson's book voucher.
$100 Robinson's
Oh.
book voucher.
Oh, and there's a
bookshop voucher.
runner-up as well.
Yeah.
There's a $50 runner-up bookshop
Excellent.
voucher.
And I think they can. I think the teens can win smaller prizes as well. Like
Yeah, as you progress, as you earn points from reading and reviewing and attending events or activities at the library, you earn points, and as you get to separate different levels, you get little prizes along the way. But we'll move on. Oh, and the secret word for the summer read activity, which is live with the librarians tonight, the secret word is Facebook. So if you add that in, you get some more points and more entries to win.
Excellent.
Very good.
That's for the adult summer read, though. Okay, there's also one for kids, but it's on the website. There's no kids watching, I'm pretty sure. Let's just talk about our favourite books now. We'll just stuff that has stuck with us over the years. If it's an older book, something that we always recommend to someone when they ask for
Oh,
something.
yes, I got
'cause
one of those.
I've got a
Ah,
few that I
okay.
just have in my mind that
Yep.
if people ask for a recommendation, I just go straight. I ask them what they like
Yes.
first.
Yep.
But if it can tie into what I
yeah.
think is really great, I'll go
It
straight
is
in.
easy if there's a book you like yourself, isn't there?
Yeah, so I think being a librarian, you might agree, the favourite part for me is talking with the customers, browsing the shelves with customers,
Yes.
Yep.
talking about books, recommending books, hearing what they've liked, and
Yeah.
then getting your own
Yeah.
recommendations from them as well.
Mhm.
So much fun. It's my favourite part. So let's start with Kirsty again.
Oh, okay. Do I have another pile of books under the table? Why, yes, I do. Okay, so the first book I'm going to talk about is actually a non-fiction book. It's called Packing for Mars.
Oh,
So it's by Mary Roach, and she's done a couple of other books, I think, but I'm pretty interested in space. So she's writing about space and the way humans interact with it. So I actually haven't finished it yet because I am very slow with non-fiction. I had to renew the maximum 3 times at the library, and then I went and bought a copy because I just am reading a chapter at a time. So she's got one chapter on motion sickness in space and why you want to do all the training so you don't throw up in your spacesuit, and a chapter on pee, and a chapter on food, and a chapter on how gravity interacts with someone's body, and she's gone and interviewed a lot of astronauts and gone to NASA and done a lot of research. It's interesting and it's funny and it's easy to digest as well, which, given the fact that I'm not usually a big non-fiction reader, is a big plus. So I definitely pick it up if you're at all interested in space, and maybe one day we'll colonize Mars, so we all need to know about that one.
I know someone that I need to buy this for Christmas.
Yeah.
Wendy, if you're watching, this might be coming.
And of course, one of my absolute favourite books, The Night Circus. Probably a lot of you already know about this book. It is absolutely gorgeous. And I am so excited that Erin Morgenstern announced recently that she's having a second book being released in November next year. I mean, if I could get in line now, I would. So The Night Circus is romantic and filled with magic and such beautiful writing, and it's one of those books I don't even know that it matters what happens in it. It is just so emotionally kind of truthful. Like, if you sat down and asked me, what's the plot of this book, what happens, I couldn't just lay it out for you piece by piece. It's about how the characters feel and what they create, and
sometimes you just get swept along by the writing. It doesn't matter.
And then I turn the last page. What happened? I feel so
and so
different.
cut off when it's finished.
Yeah, definitely. So if I did have to summarize, I would say it's about two magicians who two children who are raised to enter this magical contest with each other, that only one will come out alive, but the people who are pitting them against each other haven't reckoned on them falling in love, and they each create something magical for this spectacular circus, and they keep one after another keep creating these beautiful things in both competition but also as kind of love letters to each other.
Will I cry?
Maybe.
Okay. I'll get some tissues if I get it.
It's not really that sad, but
emotional.
It's the book that I say,
Read this.
Well, I can see Glenn's got a question about this one.
No, I'm just waiting for you to put it down so I can grab it.
You can see how well loved it is. And if anyone has read that and liked it as much as I did and is looking for something else, it's I wouldn't exactly say Uprooted by Naomi Novik is like similar in content, but it's a very similar kind of lyrical storytelling, and it's kind of a fairy tale where the main character is brought to the monster's tower, and then realizes that maybe the monster isn't as bad as she thought. So that's another beautiful.
So like Beauty and the Beast kind of.
Yeah.
So these are adult or YA?
Adult.
Adult, yeah, okay.
However, my next one started off life as YA, but it became one of those huge crossover novels, and you can find it anywhere. I don't know that I really need to describe The Book Thief to anyone. It's been around for so long, I'm sure most people are already aware of it, but it remains a book that's really stuck with me for a very long time. It made me ugly cry on the train when I read it the first time. I'm not kidding. I was sitting there and I got to a part about this far through. So if anyone who's read it probably knows a scene I'm talking about, and I was just in tears on the train. If that's, I don't know, is that a good recommendation for a book?
I think it is.
I think if you enjoyed it because
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
cried and you hated it,
It's cathartic, isn't it?
Yes.
Because you just get so emotionally involved, you have to cry.
Just in case, though, it's set in Nazi Germany and narrated by deaf, and it follows young girl Liesel as she's living through that time, and she's writing her own stories and learning to read as they're burning books around her and killing people, and you wouldn't think a book about that subject matter would be as beautiful as it is, but it's so poignant, and I cannot speak highly enough of this book.
okay.
So if you come across someone who hasn't read that, you just throw it at them.
Well, I haven't read that. I haven't read that yet. I was actually
There
just
you
thinking
go.
about
You
Maurice
can-
Gleitzman's books and
Yes,
wondering,
yeah.
you know, how they compare, like
Mm.
once and then and now,
After.
after. Yeah.
You can take that home with you.
Wow, that's a big tomb, isn't it?
That's heavy.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
I'm talking a lot.
You just too many books.
I know, I love, well, don't most
It's so
librarians.
hard.
Right,
Yeah, I know.
right,
It's hard.
right.
It's so hard.
And The Rook by Daniel O'Malley. I can't remember why I picked this one up initially. He's an Australian author, but the book is set in London, and it's a supernatural suspense. So the main character wakes up in the first chapter in the middle of a field surrounded by dead bodies, and she's wearing surgical gloves, and
Oh.
she can't remember who she is.
Oh.
But she has a letter in her pocket, and she opens the letter, and the letter begins, dear you, the body you are wearing used to be mine. And then she has to decide whether, who did this to her, what happened, and go in, and turns out she's working for a secret supernatural organization embedded in the government, and she's got to pretend that she has her memory still and figure out the conspiracy, and it's just brilliant. I've reread
So
it.
does she recognise her reflection as not her own?
She must do, I suppose.
She must do, mustn't she?
doesn't,
Yeah.
Okay. It does have a follow-up. I didn't enjoy the follow-up quite as much, but the Rook stands by itself. You don't need to read the second one, which was good, but I loved this so much. There was just no real standing up to it. So The Rook by
I think
Daniel
the
O'Malley.
trouble sometimes is that you have such a sacred memory of a book. You can't really read the follow-up, even though
Yeah.
you'd really like to.
Yeah, sometimes that happens,
which is
doesn't it?
what's going to worry me about my next book,
I think you have one of my favourite books down there.
The Rosy Project.
No.
Oh,
Spoilers.
oh, what do I?
Oh, you're not going to get through all those, are you? So
No, I'm going to, so you won't get to hear. Sorry. The Rosy Project. I often recommend this to people when they say they want something to read, and it's not too heavy. I end up reading it in a day because once I started reading it, I just fell in love with it. It's wonderful.
Fun.
I've met the author at a talk. He's really interesting. He wrote the script first. He wants to win an Academy Award, so he's written the script. And you don't get to get the Academy Award unless you originally wrote the screenplay. So he wrote the screenplay first, then he wrote the book. He spent a lot of time on it, and it shows. It reads easily, but it's so wonderful. I usually say to people when we're talking about books and what kind of things do you like, and I said, do you like The Big Bang Theory? They go, oh, yes. And I said, this guy's like Sheldon. They go, oh, I'll take it. It's wonderful. He's a professor at Melbourne University, professor of, doctor of genetics. A lot like Sheldon, hasn't really got any friends except for his supervisor and his wife, and he goes there for dinner with them occasionally. And one day he turns up there at dinner and says, I'm getting married. They said, oh, you're getting married? You don't know anyone. He said, oh no, I've studied this, and married men live longer. I think that's very good. It's good for your health. I've written a 16-page questionnaire, and I'm going to find a wife. I'll just get people to answer it. Who answers things the best? That's all marry. And they're like, okay, good luck with that. And so lots of things happen. It's set in Melbourne, Carlton. It goes to the market. It's really, really interesting. It's funny. He's a lovely character. It's a great book.
Yeah, I enjoyed that
Yeah.
one as well. Initially, though, I think I was listening to it in audio at first, and I couldn't decide whether the writer was making fun of the character.
Yes.
But as I got a bit further in, I was seeing that it was more a gentle humour
Yes.
about it,
Yeah.
and it is a very funny
And
book.
he is very supportive. And the author actually worked in IT for a long time. His main field was in IT, and he managed a big business. So he met a lot of people like that. Those very narrow focused, often not good socialising, and
Yeah.
so his wife's a psychologist. So he got a lot of advice from her. So I think the character's very true to life.
Yeah.
And he doesn't realise that he's probably on the autistic spectrum. Well, he definitely is. But it's really, really interesting. And lovable characters. The people are very nice. And you can see things that are going to happen that he can't. And that's really clever
Yeah.
writing. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. This is, it's also in with my what I'm looking forward to. But this one, I read Minette Walters. Brilliant book. I've read most of her books. Haven't read her most famous one, The Scold's Bridal. Never read that because it sounded a little bit scary. Just the way it was. But I've loved her other books. So this one is a different departure from her. She's usually got things set in London, a little bit grimy, murder mysteries. This one is set in about 1300s with the Black Plague coming. Really interesting characters. There's a very nasty lord of the manor who's in his 40s or 50s, not a very nice person. His much younger wife and their 13-year-old daughter. He goes off with a lot of his men to see what's going on. They've heard about the plague coming and that. The wife hears that the plague is coming close to them, gets in all the servants, all the serfs from around, and seals them in the castle, and won't let anyone in or out. And she's doing all she can to try and protect people, whilst fighting against her daughter, who's like, I want Dad wouldn't allow this, I'm going to be in charge. And it's really, really interesting, this young woman standing up and trying to do the right thing in the face of all this opposition and save the people. Really fascinating book, well researched, of the time. It's really good. The only thing wrong with it was that when I got to the last page, it says to be continued. What?
No.
What? 'Cause I was really feeling for all these people, and I'm like, oh my god. So luckily I can't even get it now because they're all out.
Yeah.
And luckily I didn't read it when it first came out, because it was only about 6 months later till the new one came out. So I'm really looking forward to reading this, which continues the story.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so
It's a lovely cover, too.
Oh, it's great. So, in a land laid waste by pestilence, the freedom of all depends on the courage of a few. It's really good about people standing up and really fighting against something and just hoping they're doing the right thing. Really, really
So
interesting.
what's that second one called?
The second one's The Turn of Midnight. Yeah. The first one was The Last Hours. So The Turn of Midnight. And I think that's sort of coming into dawn and things, hopefully we get a good dawn and everything's
Yes.
better in the
we're going
daylight.
to we're going to list all these on the
Yes,
website afterwards,
yeah.
aren't we? Or on the podcast.
Oh, is that you talking about your favourite one?
That's my favourite.
Okay. I'll just quickly talk about this.
No, I'm not talking about anything. You can talk about it.
No, that's all right, because
Don't get me started.
and only because I bought some books there. We didn't know how time was going to go. That a lot of people might have seen Outlander on TV. I didn't mind it. It's really well acted, I know, but there were just so much sex in it that it got a bit too much. I'm like, what? I don't remember this much, but you don't notice as much in the book. The book is wonderful. It's been out for over 20 years, Outlander. Fantastic book. I worked at another library and it had just come out and everyone was talking about Jamie. They go, oh, Jamie's so wonderful. Jamie's great. I thought, oh, sounds like the biggest romance. And I was talking to someone else a few months later and she goes, no, it's great. It's sort of like science fiction, it's history, it's romance, it's
adventure.
everything. It's wonderful. And so Diana Gabaldon, if you've seen the TV series and liked it, I'm sure you'll love the book. It's so in-depth, very well written. Have you read it?
I have read it. I'm going to be a little contentious and
Oh.
say, while I did enjoy it, I found there's quite a lot of assault.
There is,
And
and someone I know,
it's
she said
quite-
the same thing, and she
yeah.
said,
Yes, there is.
and I
And
said, I
sexual
didn't.
assault,
Well,
not-
that's what
not
she
just-
said. She said,
yeah.
"Oh, there's a rape in there, and I don't agree with rape." And I said, "I didn't even notice it. I think I just sort of skimmed over that bit, which sounds awful, but I didn't notice that." And it's sort of the time I think that
Yeah,
there were
it's
atrocities
definitely
done.
It's definitely true to
Yes,
the time.
and it was a violent
Um,
life and a lot harder to survive. But I think you can skip over that easily.
There's some really graphic violence in there.
There is.
Definitely not. I wouldn't call it a romance.
No, you couldn't call it a romance. There is a big romance between these two people that lasts for a long time, and there's about 5 or 6 other books after that. It's wonderful, their relationship, and seeing the growth in it over the years. But history is violent, and there is a lot of violence in the history. But it's a fantastic book. It's about, so it's 1945, Claire Randall. She's a nurse in the war. The war's just finished. Her husband's been away at war, and they've gone for a honeymoon to sort of reconnect, and they hadn't seen each other much since they'd married. Second honeymoon, reconnecting in the Scottish Highlands, 1945. She'd been looking after all the ill young men in the war, since she's a nurse, which is really interesting. And she gets up one morning, goes for a walk, and walks in this ring of stones, and is transported back to the 1645, I think, to the Battle of Culloden.
17 something.
Is it 1743? Yes, so it's the Battle of Culloden and Scotland, which is when Bonnie Prince Charlie was trying to get onto the throne. Yeah, and so she's just in the middle of this battle and just trying to find out what's going on. And it's really interesting because she helps them a lot because there's all the young men through the war, so she understands how they are, and she's a big help. It's really, really fascinating.
She arrives a little bit before the actual battle, and she knows the future, so she's trying to prevent it happening.
Yes.
Because so many people died.
Yes, and it was a disaster.
And it follows that story. And obviously, 200 years ago, things were a bit different. So she's from the future, and she knows how women are respected, or women are more equal than they were.
Yes.
200 years ago, and so that's a bit of a shock as well. The way she's treated, and she's like, she stands up for herself, and they're all surprised by that.
She's used to having her opinion counted, and
yeah.
I'm an intelligent woman. You should be listening to me. And
she really takes charge of situations and doesn't let anyone tell her what to do. It's
right
really
from the start.
Yeah, and it's great. And because Diana Gabaldon is very clever, she's a professor of botany, and there's so much information in there that is written into the book naturally. You know, you don't feel like you're reading.
Doesn't interfere with it.
No, it doesn't interfere
you feel
with
like
it.
You're there.
Yeah, you do. You feel like you're there. It is very good, and you wouldn't like to be living in those times. Not really.
No.
But it's fascinating. It's great.
Okay, you can put that on my pile.
Oh, okay.
Have you got anything, Gary?
No, nothing. None that I've previously recommended, or none that I've got here. I've got a couple coming up that I want to read if we've got time to.
Okay, well let's finish with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I brought a couple here. One was the Salman Rushdie one. This one's called 2 Years, 8 Months and 28 Nights. And I'm a Rushdie fan. I've attempted to read 2 of his. Haven't got all the way through, which was interesting. Read one of his called Grimace, which I think was his first book, which was a bit more fantastic than some of his other stories. I read that one all the way through. That was fantastic. So I picked this one up, based on the fact that it's had a lot of press, good press, I think, in recent years. This one is about in the future New York. There's a big storm, and then after this big storm, some unusual things start to happen. There's, and I'm just going by what's in the flyleaf here, so I haven't actually started this, but so it says that a gardener, after the storm, a gardener finds that his feet no longer touch the ground. There is a baby which can sense corruption. A baby which senses corruption. So when a baby's in the room, those corrupt people around the baby come out in boils and and there's what was the other one? I know there's a gold digger who gold-digging woman who finds herself confronting like the dark demons.
Yeah.
And there's something else here that I can't. Oh, that's right. There was a graphic artist who wakes up one morning to find that one of his creations is standing in his room.
Ah.
And the basis for this story is that these people are descendants from jinn, so
yeah.
mythological
jinn.
creatures from very popular in Arabic mythology. And the idea being that after this storm, a sort of a rift has opened up. These jinn have come into the world, and then follows 1,001 nights, or 2 years, 8 months, and 28 days, 28 nights.
It's like a modern retelling.
That's right. He goes into mythology, he goes into other types of history, and children's stories.
You'll have to
and
tell
bits and
me.
pieces like
Do you
that.
just want to hold it to the camera and point out what they did? Because that's actually a person, isn't it? It's like the lightnings. I didn't recognise
So
it.
you've got a lightning bolt with somebody standing
Yeah.
beneath it.
So that's how
So-
insignificant the person is.
Yeah.
And the heavens coming down and having the effect.
So I don't know whether
That's interesting, isn't
Rusty comes under the sort of the magical realism title, but I certainly like that style of writing, and I think that's certainly one that I'll be looking out for. And then just one other one that I will mention quickly. This is by this is called The Free Body Problem, called by I don't know how Shizing Lu.
Oh, okay.
I did have a go at pronouncing that one earlier, and it sounded right in my head, but I've forgotten it now. But anyway, so this guy is, or this person, I should say, is one of the best-selling Chinese science fiction writers currently out.
Win a Hugo as well.
There's one
the other year.
Hugo, or the Chinese version of the Hugo, and the Chinese Nebula Award as well. And this is the first one that's been translated into English. So I'm really keen to have a go at reading this one. This is about, set shortly after the Chinese Republic Revolution, when a secret organisation have shot a signal into space to try to contact different life forms. And way out in space, someone has heard that signal, and they've made preparations to contact Earth. So it's a very familiar idea, but then the idea continues that suddenly their response is sort of situating in the gamer's realm. So this game suddenly appears that captures everyone's attention, and through the storyline of the game, people become either pro or against the idea of an alien species coming to Earth and overthrowing what people consider a corrupt regime. And so you then have two factions on Earth that are either pro the invaders coming or those against. So I was curious, A, because I like science fiction, and B, because it's an international writer for the first time in English, and I was keen to see what their sensibilities were, whether they approach these types of stories in the same way as an American or an Australian or an English writer might. So Shijing Lu, and that one's called The Free Body Problem.
That's really interesting, isn't it? I'm scared now because that's how they're going to get us, isn't it? Through the games. That they've
Who
got
knows?
millions of people ready there to.
Maybe they're
I feel
already doing
paranoid
it.
now.
Maybe it's already happening.
It could be.
Alright. Well, we'll wrap it up there. So thanks to Kirsty and Paulina and Gary
Thank you.
for spending their Friday night at the library. And thank you everyone who watched. Let us know what you thought of this format or whatever it is we're doing in the comments, because we want to know if anyone liked it. We might do it again if people want to. If not, we won't. That's fine. We're just trying it out.
I've got more books.
Don't forget to sign up to the summer read if you haven't already. Enjoy the rest of the year, read lots of books, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Very good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was good,
Very
wasn't it?
well, yep.